Welcome to AK Anime Explainer. Today is explanation of Soul Land 3, Legend of the Dragon King Part 278. Without any delay, start explanation. The life seed had finally established its roots in the plain seed. The entire branch instantly turned emerald green in color. A dense source of life came from the life seed and charged into Tang Wulin's body. It eased his extremely bloated meridian vessels. Without a doubt, this nourishment was greatly beneficial to Tang Wulin's bodily qualities. It could also stabilize his body from the forced breakthroughs he had just achieved. It expanded his small lake and strengthened his body. Without exaggeration, the improvement in Tang Wulin's bodily qualities that happened in this short period of time was equivalent to what he would achieve after a year of cultivation. This was definitely great news for him. There was definitely nothing better than this to face the Golden Dragon King seals in the future. At the current level of his body's quality, even the slightest improvement was difficult to achieve, let alone a large-scale enhancement. He would never have imagined that he would meet with a fortune as good as he did today. And Emperor finally understood how the six-clawed demon Emperor met its end. After its plain seed was firmly captured, the plain seed struggle started weakening. The origin power that belonged to its plane was being widely devoured by the life seed. Tang Wulin could feel that some strange change was happening inside the life seed. The branch was growing in girth. The more wonderful thing was that the dense life force was compressing inwardly, and to a great extent at that. It was as if it was storing something. With the addition of the life seed, most of the energy was brought away by it. However, as he utilized his mysterious heaven method to condition his own body, Tang Wulin could also use this opportunity to feel the nourishment of the life force. Opportunities to improve as greatly as this would not come often in anyone's lifetime. Also, he could faintly feel his understanding of life and devouring deepen again. Back then, when he was still on Demon Island, he had experienced both types of energies. Currently, the life force that the life seed gave him was denser and purer than the life force on Demon Island. This was a plane's energy at that. Although he could not utilize it directly, he was still nature's child. As such, the nourishment of these life forces on him would not be small. Moreover, the opportunity to devour this time was brought by Tang Wulin to begin with. Cao Dashi recalled his heartless sword. Currently, he felt completely relieved. He did not have the time to look at the situation inside the passages. However, since only 2 Abyssal Kings had come up until now, it meant that this passage was not easy to pass. It was unprecedented to be able to destroy 2 Abyssal Plane levels. It would be an extreme blow to the Abyssal Plane. Destroy the enemy and strengthen oneself. If they could drag this battle longer and destroy another Abyssal King, then they would not have to be worried about the Abyssal Plane. With this, not only would Doluor Continent's life seed be able to be nurtured, but Tang Wulin could also grow at an increased pace. This was killing many birds with one stone. Just when this blood one was satisfied, the bright mirror Doluor's entire domain suddenly shook violently. A slightly anxious voice reached them. "Old cow, this is bad. Come and help, quick. The abyssal passage is about to break open." Cao Dashi was shocked. When he entered the abyss's depth just now, in truth, he had already seen that the abyss's seal was not opened completely. The abyssal creatures must have used some sort of trick to create a small opening. There was no way that the seal set down by great experts would be broken so easily. Although this was what he thought, he still charged out of the domain at the very moment he heard it. Tang Wulin had already controlled the devouring process, so he no longer needed him. Inside the abyssal passage currently, a series of deafening and shattering noises sounded. Terrifying energy shockwaves surged outside. The abyssal creatures that had charged out before this were all blown to bits. They had turned into abyssal energy and returned to the abyss. In the depths of the abyss, the vortex that had formed sunk downward. Huge cracks started appearing on the stable and tough seals. Extremely dense abyssal energy started spilling out of those cracks. What's this? The heartless Doluor felt that something was off at the very first moment. His expression was tainted by fear. Zhong Huanyan had a dark expression on his face. "I'm afraid that we'll have a bit more of trouble." "Did you succeed just now?" It was a success. The six-clawed demon emperor is done for. I reckon the abyssal level it was on has also collapsed. This is bad. The abyssal kings must have felt that something wasn't right. Could it be that they want to fight to the death right now? Regardless of the price they had to pay? In Cao Deji's judgment, once an abyssal king dies and results in the collapse of some abyssal plane level, the best course of action for the abyssal plane would be to break away from the abyssal passage and sever the connection with the world of Dolor. If this happened, the abyssal plane's problem that had troubled the Dolor continent for more than 6,000 years would naturally be easily overcome, like cutting through butter with a hot knife. However, he had not expected that the abyssal plane will choose to forcibly break open the seal with some unknown method after the deaths of a few kings. This clearly was their way of expressing their intention to fight with humans to death. The six-clawed demon emperor and an emperor, they were only two abyssal kings. If more abyssal kings made it through, they would be in great trouble. Huanyun, we can't let them completely break open the seal. Let's work together to fortify it. Let's activate the blood god's great array, Cao Deji said decisively. However, Zhong Huanyun hesitated. But if we did that, you won't be able to continue attacking them. You'll also have to involve your personnel from the blood god battalion. Besides, the cracks are already there. There'll still be an endless stream of abyssal creatures charging out of them. I don't think our seal can hold them up. There's bound to be more abyssal kings appearing after this. The heartless Dolor said decisively, we must hold them off no matter what. The abyssal passage seal can't be broken at any cost. If it breaks and dozens of abyssal kings charge out of it at the same time, that'll be the true disaster. We must activate the blood god's great array. You'll support Wulin to plug the cracks. We'll fortify the seal. We must hold them off no matter the cost. Right now, we can only put our faith in the young ones. When he said this, Cao Deji's body swayed and he rose into midair. He shouted at Blood God Battalion's blood gods, all personnel of Blood God Battalion, make preparations for the blood god's array. Wulin's position will be taken up by the former Blood 9. He raised his right arm as he said this. A classic-looking sword appeared in his hands. However, there was only one this time. His sword was about 4 feet and 3 inches long. Its blade was like water as it shone with faint, ice-cold ripples. Circles of soul rings rose from under his body. 6 black and 3 red. 9 soul rings circled around him. As the first person of Tang Sect's sect master, and Dolor Hall's hall master, when this limit Dolor allowed his own aura to burst forth, even the skies darkened. It was as if countless sharp air flows were falling from the skies. Cao Deji raised his hand and pointed his heartless sword to the skies at an angle. The skies immediately lit up. A ray of light descended from the skies. As the light fell, it turned into a huge golden sword which dropped down. It instantly stabbed into the depths of the abyss with unparalleled sharpness. The dense abyssal energies which had just surged out of the cracks immediately shrunk under the shine of this huge golden sword. It entered the inside of the passage. Zhong Huanyun dared not dally. He knew that Cao Deji was right. If they did not fortify the seal right now, then seal would truly be broken and that would be a huge disaster. He swung both arms and 9 beams of golden light flew toward different parts of the wall near the passage's exit. When the 9 beams of light fell on the wall steadily and revealed their actual bodies, there were 9 impressive-looking, shield-shaped badges. Every badge had a picture on it representing the first master of the respective badges. Back in the beginning, these 9 almighty soul masters joined hands to set down the seals inside the abyssal plane's passage. At present, after a few thousand years, the seals had finally appeared once again. 9 tokens sank into the wall. The entire abyssal passage was shaking violently. With the 9 tokens as its starting point, a large stretch of golden striations crept towards the depth of the abyssal passage. Loud booming sounds were still being emitted from the inside of the abyssal passage, but now the situation seemed to have stabilized slightly. 9 circular platforms slowly arose from the walls. Blood 1 swayed his body and led the way to the 12 o'clock position right ahead. He took a seat on the platform while the rest of the 8 blood gods each walked to a platform and sat cross-legged on it. Use my blood as a guide. A puff of blood mist burst from Blood One's body. It was completely forced out from his pores. The blood mist filled the air while Blood One's face immediately turned ghastly pale. Use my blood as a guide. The rest of the 8 blood gods chanted the same incantation as huge puffs of blood mists were unleashed from their bodies too. Immediately after the unleash, the blood mist fused into the platform underneath their bodies without wasting a second. Instantly, the golden scriptures in the entire cavern were illuminated. They clearly lit up everything to the deepest part of the abyssal passage. One could see a large stretch of black mist surging in the depth of the passage by just looking down from the above. Piercing cracking noise was continuously being heard. Dark purple radiance indistinctly shimmered from the depth of the abyss in an attempt to creep upward. However, the array immediately stabilized with a force of downward suppression from the infused blood of the 9 blood gods. Spirit of nature, hear my guidance. The soul of Dolor, forge the foundation. Blood One's valiant voice echoed all the way to the top of the abyssal passage. The disk underneath his seat was shimmering as if the sun was shining on it with streams of golden radiance, spinning around his body before rising into the sky. Soon after, Blood 2 shouted aloud, Spirit of water, hear my guidance. The soul of Dolor, forge the foundation. Blood 3 said, Spirit of fire, hear my guidance. The soul of Dolor, forge the foundation. Blood 4 said, Spirit of earth, hear my guidance. The soul of Dolor, forge the foundation. Blood 5 said, Spirit of wind, hear my guidance. The soul of Dolor, forge the foundation. Blood 6 said, Spirit of light, hear my guidance. The soul of Dolor, forge the foundation. Blood 7 said, Spirit of darkness, hear my guidance. The soul of Dolor, forge the foundation. Blood 8 said, Spirit of time, hear my guidance. The soul of Dolor, forge the foundation. Blood 9 said, Spirit of space. In the chanting of 9 incantations, 9 discs were separately shimmering with different colors. The water disc shone with blue, the fire disc with red, the wind disc with green. 9 great nature spirits completely bloomed with the 9 blood gods' sacrifice of fresh blood as guidance to trigger the array underneath them. In the beginning, the blood gods' great array was created by the combined efforts of 9 almighty soul masters, but the seal was not formed from the strength of these 9 people. Instead, the exceedingly complicated scriptures and their efforts in saving the people acted as guides to accumulate 9 nature's spiritual energies on the continent in order to forge the seal. Dolor continent's principle of exclusion toward this otherworldly plane was utilized. As a result, the seal managed to block the arrival of the abyssal plane for such a long period of time. On the other hand, just as the seal was about to be completed, the Almighty from the abyssal plane devoted all its strength to finally leave behind some small fissures in the area surrounding the seal. These fissures were meant to allow a passageway for ordinary abyssal creatures so that they would not be killed by the seal. This was the origin of those 36 passages. Otherwise, the abyssal plane would be completely isolated if the seal had been perfectly completed back then. The most important purpose for Blood God Battalion's existence was to replicate the 9 senior Almighty Soul Masters from that time in the most crucial moments. They guided the 9 nature's spiritual energy to gather around the seal and triggered the seal to its most powerful extent. Even though there was a disparity between the abilities of today's 9 blood gods and the 9 seniors from back then, these 9 great blood gods were assisted by their battle armors. After all, battle armors had yet to completely take form in the Soul Masters world 6,000 years ago. Even though not every one of them was a limit, Dolor, Blood One, who assumed command in the middle, had even exceeded the ability of the seniors. While the rest of the blood gods relied on their battle armors to elevate their cultivation base to Hyper Dolor rank, his strength alone could complete 1/3 of the process of the entire array. The dark clouds in the sky gradually transformed. Radiances of all colors faintly rippled. In the eyes of a limit Dolor rank powerhouse's spiritual power, Zhong Huanyan's spiritual power allowed him to clearly sense how the different attributes of the elemental molecules in the air were rapidly condensing under the guidance of the array. These nature's spirits were all the natural laws of Dolor continent. They could undoubtedly sense the invasion from the otherworldly plane, so they chose to guard their plane without the slightest bit of reluctance under the guidance provided by the array. Nine-colored radiance covered was suspended above the abyssal passage akin to a gigantic shield of light. The radiance of 9 different colors each infused into the 9 blood gods' bodies separately before infusing into the array through the guidance of their bodies. The golden striations on the array immediately brightened with light while the opened fissures below stopped cracking. There was no way it could continue to crack, and one could even feel like it was about to close up. On the other side, one after another king's body exploded on the abyssal plane. The purest form of abyssal energy bloomed as it wildly surged into the passage like monsters that tearing apart the fissures so that more abyssal energy could fuse into this side. This was no longer the battle between two worlds but was now the battle of natural laws between the two planes. Piercing howls and screeches continuously echoed from the depth of the abyssal passage. Zhong Huanyun raised his hand. Prepare the protective shield, prepare the seismic wave. All hands on board, enter code red. 9 blood gods had albeit stabilized the seal, but the abyssal plane was still trying to break the seal at all costs. Then they would be welcoming an immense abyssal tide for sure. A tide that was unprecedented in history. The powerhouses of the blood god army had already all gathered behind Zhong Huanyun. The 9 blood gods aside, amongst the sole masters of the blood god army there were more than 10 titled low-rank powerhouses. They were all clad in 3-word battle armor as they quietly stood awaiting the arrival of this great war. Meanwhile, in the depth of the abyssal plain, Sage King, the price is too great. We've already opened the fissure, but the humans are using some sort of unknown method to strengthen the seal even more, so it's very difficult for us to charge though. I'm afraid it takes the sacrifice of more 10 kings. Are we going to? Shut up. If the sacrifice of 10 fails, then we'll send 15. If 15 fails, then we'll send 20. We can never give mankind the opportunity to recuperate and grow. I can already sense that a form of energy capable of annihilating our entire plane is being produced in the human world's natural law. This time is possibly our only chance. We can never allow mankind to grow more powerful. Yes, Sage King. Rumble, rumble. Meanwhile, the abyssal plane once again began to shake violently. The natural laws were in chaos as countless weak abyssal creatures were instantly disintegrated on the plane. Bloodthirsty eyes shimmered while savage energy burst forth in a split second and the revolting abyssal plane calmed down a little. And Emperor is gone too. Its plane seed has already disappeared as well. Now you should understand why I choose to wage a battle of life and death with mankind right now. If we don't spare any effort in waging a fight, then in the recent future it's very possible that we won't be the ones invading the human world but the human world will annihilate us completely. Monarch's aura abruptly crept outward when a deep roar was heard. A stream of blood-red radiance penetrated countless layers of barriers before ferociously blasting against the passage seal that was made up of thousands of golden scriptures. Boom! The 9 blood gods guarding the seals were all trembling violently. 3 of them with the weakest cultivation base could not help spitting out mouthfuls of fresh blood. Blood One's expression changed as he pointed his right hand to the air. 3 heartless swords shot out like lightning and suspended in the air over Blood 7, Blood 8 and Blood 9's heads to assist them in suppressing the seals below them. Blood 9's heart was filled with gratitude. He devoted all his effort in cultivating for the past 1 month after losing to Tang Wulin. He had made quite an improvement since then, even his cultivation base had elevated by 1 rank. The experience allowed him to be in a relatively relaxed state as he was engaged in the process of guarding the seal at the moment. If this was the past, he was afraid that he would have been spitting out more than just a mouthful of fresh blood earlier. The fissures around the seal that had originally begun closing cracked once again with a violent boom. Gushes of thick black airflow surged out akin to a swarm of bees. These airflows began to condense and take shape before transforming into countless abyssal creatures that wildly surged towards the passage's exit. On the other hand, at least 5 abyssal kings had appeared amongst these abyssal creatures. An abyssal king appeared among them, assuming command in the middle, appearing no different from a human female. Her entire body was covered in a black leather suit while 2 pieces of black wings on her back were spread open. She was extremely beautiful with her long black hair spread out like a disc behind the back of her head. Her eyes were filled with piercing coldness. It was as if her pair of icy cold eyes could see through the entire world. She stretched out her right hand and pointed to the exit. Like a bee swarm, thousands of abyssal creatures surged out at once. That's the Black Monarch. Zhong Huanyun's expression immediately changed when he recognized this creature. With their experience of dealing with the abyssal plane for over 6,000 years, the Blood God Army had an extremely abundant supply of information regarding abyssal creatures. Even though the Abyssal Kings could only strike through space during every abyssal tide and could not take part with their real bodies, their projections would still appear on many occasions. Observing their projections, mankind assigned names to these Abyssal Kings. At least more than half of the kings from 108 layers of the abyss had been seen by mankind. On the other hand, the Black Monarch before Zhong Huanyun's eyes was ranked in the top 10 among Abyssal Kings and had also appeared the most before. She was positioned in the 9th layer of the abyss and was the 9th ranked Abyssal King. Only the kings from the first 10 layers of the abyss were qualified to be addressed as monarch. Her position was aloof to others in the abyssal plane. Black Monarch was the leader of the Black Empress clan. She possessed the terrifying force of a demigod-ranked creature, which was enough to rival a human limit Doluor clad in full-word battle armor. Despite just being a projection, the power of her abilities once brought loads of troubles for the human world. The abyssal plane utilized the fissures from before to open up the seal's crack at all costs this time. Surprisingly, the first king that appeared this time was the Black Monarch, and with her real body at that. This showed that the abyssal plane was very determined in doing so. Black Monarch seemed to have heard Zhong Huanyun's words. She raised her head and looked towards him. They gazed into each other's eyes, and Zhong Huanyun only felt as if his eyes were being pierced by needles. Even though he was also at the limit Doluor rank, he had just entered it recently. His cultivation base was still a tad inferior to beings of the same rank, like the Heartless Doluor and Black Monarch. The abyssal plane had even transmitted Black Monarch's real body. If the other monarch rank abyssal kings were transmitted to this side, they would truly be rendered incapable of resisting. Fortunately, the abyssal energy that was supporting the cracks in the seal had weakened after the large batch of abyssal creatures was transmitted here. The crack was closing up much faster under the Blood God's great array suppression. It was apparent that within a short period of time the abyss would not be able to transfer any more powerhouses to this side. The 5 abyssal monarchs did not attack at once, but they kept floating in the air with Black Monarch as the center as they gazed up to the exit. Countless abyssal creatures wildly launched their attacks to the outside, akin to an oil blowout. At once, the line of defense was in a critical situation. Fortunately, the passage seal was stabilized temporarily with the joint efforts of the Blood God Battalion's 9 great blood gods. Otherwise, a large number of abyssal kings charging out would result in even more terrifying catastrophe. Artillery fire immediately blasted in an even more densely arranged manner, turning the inside of the entire abyssal passage into a sea of energy storm. The deceased abyssal creatures turned into thick abyssal energy that lashed towards the seal so that the following abyssal creatures could continue to wildly attack. There was no doubt that mankind's soul technology had always been improving for the past 6,000 years. Just 6,000 years ago, mankind only had rank 9 fixed soul ammunitions, while the highest version available now was already rank 20 fixed soul ammunition that could even destroy a powerful building like Shrek Academy. After 6,000 years ago, mankind's technological advancement was already much more powerful than back in the beginning. Even though the Blood God Army was not included in the Federation's military order, no matter how tormented they were, the Federation dared not reduce its support for it even by a little. The abyssal creature's invasion to the continent 6,000 years ago was listed as the Federation's top-secret agenda. On the other hand, the mission to safeguard Blood God Army's fighting ability was also listed as the highest priority of the Federation. As a result, for the past 6,000 years, everything in the Blood God Army was all the Federation's newest technology. Including defensive position, all sorts of weapons, and even some of the experimental stage weapons were supplied to this place before being adjusted and modified through continuous battles with the abyssal creatures in the branched passages. Mankind's military hardware at present allowed mankind to confront these abyssal kings without fear. All this time, the most troubling part of the abyssal passage was its ability to remain undead. This was also the reason why Blood One was so overjoyed upon witnessing that Tang Wulin's golden dragon spear was truly capable of devouring abyssal energy. Of course, the major premise of being able to resist was to ensure that the abyssal plane would never invade the human world. Otherwise, the internal strife of one plane would certainly bring forth a destructive catastrophe to all mankind. When mankind was dead, there was no way for them to be resurrected like the abyssal creatures. Hence, the Federation would need to guard the abyssal passage where the Blood God army was positioned at regardless of other matters. Bright Mirror Doluo Zhong Huanyun had an expression as calm as water. Despite his experience of over 60 years, he could not help but feel his chest tighten in dealing with these abyssal creatures. He genuinely had a rich experience in fighting against abyssal creatures, but on the premise that there was a certain limit to the situation. It had already been countless years since the Abyssal Kings had truly appeared in the human world like today. As the regimental commander, he could not take the risk of slipping into the Abyssal Plane to experience the abilities of the Abyssal Kings. Heartless Doluo as the army's Blood One had more experience in this area than him. The fall of 6-clawed Demon Emperor and Emperor in succession had given them exceedingly huge confidence, but the 5 great kings that had arrived in quick succession could not be blocked by the military hardware they had at present. They could only block them by unleashing destruction weapons that were even more powerful. Yet, the issue was that he could not tell the extent of the Black Monarch's abilities. Black Monarch's identity as 9th in the rank of Abyssal Kings and leader of Black Empress clan was enough to cast fear in Blood God army. It was already considered a tremendous event when only one Black Empress was to appear in the branched passages, let alone the personal presence of the Black Monarch. The Black Empress clan was a minority clan in all layers of the Abyssal Plane, but its individual fighting capacity was extremely powerful, such that it could even be ranked among the top 5 in average fighting capacity of the entire Abyss. When Zhong Huanyun was still young, he had once engaged in a fight with a Black Empress, and he could still clearly remember how he was caught in a tight corner. The Black Empress was already very incisive, thus he could only imagine how powerful the Black Monarch's abilities were. Booming sounds rose one after another while the artillery fire was being fired even quicker now. The Blood God army's soldiers displayed exceedingly high quality in the face of such aggressive assault and were completely calm. They alternated all sorts of weapons energy tank according to many years of drills and had already engaged some reserved weapons in the battle as well. Prepare to engage corrosive bomb. Zhong Huanyun's expression was still as calm as water as he dispatched order upon order. A massive cylindrical soul device over 30 meters in diameter slowly arose from the ground near the passage's exit. The cylinder was painted dark green in color, adorned with a black skull pattern. One could sense its terror just by looking with one's eyes. The cylinder aimed at the direction of the abyssal passage diagonally, with energy fluctuation radiating indistinctly from the inside. At present, after being wildly charged by the countless abyssal creatures, the blockade line was already getting nearer to the passage's exit. "Launch the corrosive bomb," ordered Zhong Huanyun. A ball of dark green radiance emitted from the inside of the green cylinder. Soon after, a dark green light sphere was launched and projecting a beautiful parabolic curve in the sky. It headed straight for the center of the abyssal passage's exit. The blockade line at the abyssal passage's exit paused for a brief moment while as the abyssal creatures immediately seized the opportunity and ferociously charged from below. However, the massive dark green light sphere of almost 30 meters in diameter had already been dropped into the abyssal passage. The light sphere inevitably came into contact with the abyssal creatures. A ghastly scene appeared. It was as if the abyssal creatures were glued to the light sphere on touching them. The abyssal creatures could not struggle free from the adhesion and they began to slowly melt away from them. It was even stranger that the light sphere seemed to be emitting a gush of suction force such that the abyssal energy converted from the melted abyssal creatures was unable to disintegrate and be absorbed into the abyssal passage below but could only dissipate slowly. Mankind studied abyssal creatures for many years, so it was naturally impossible for mankind to not have come up with an idea to deal with them. The corrosive bomb was a secret weapon that was specially designed to deal with abyssal creatures. It was produced by utilizing a special type of soul circuits principle and was not only capable of disintegrating a large portion of abyssal creatures, but it was also effective in producing very powerful adhesion toward them. The abyssal creatures could not return to the abyssal plane in the form of energy after being killed in the battle. Even though this was meant to serve as a temporary measure, it was rather effective when used against such a large-scale outbreak from the abyssal passage. Zhong Huanyun ordered as he watched the corrosive bomb carried a good number of abyssal creatures along with it as it dropped into the depth of the abyssal passage. Detonate! A loud booming sound was heard when a massive dark green light sphere instantaneously exploded in the depth of the abyssal passage. Radiance shot out in all directions as a large amount of green liquid diffused into the surroundings before tainting a large number of abyssal creatures. Then it began to corrode violently while tainting their abyssal energy. Meanwhile, the strength of the abyssal creatures was also revealed. Ordinary abyssal creatures died rapidly upon coming in contact with the corrosive bomb. However, some of the more powerful abyssal creatures had their ways to react to that. Following the arrival of Black Monarch, veiled in a black fog all over their bodies were 12 Black Empresses that looked smaller than her. At present, there were 6 Black Empresses guarding by Black Monarch's side while the other 6 Black Empresses had already leaped into the sky. The thick black fog around their bodies surged upward and came into contact with the corrosive fluid that burst out from the corrosive bomb. The black fog violently fluctuated and the corrosive fluid was soon tainted by it turning into a part of the black fog. It was precisely due to their trick that the powerful corrosive fluid had no way to kill more abyssal creatures. Even as such, the corrosive bomb did manage to pause the momentum of the fierce attack of abyssal creatures. 6 Black Empresses leaped into the air and acted as the main fighting force. They finally made a move while the 5 Abyssal Kings led by Black Monarch remained unbudged on the same spot as they quietly observed the situation at the exit. 6 Black Empresses flew into the air while the rest of the abyssal creatures immediately clustered around their bodies. These 6 Black Empresses were all unleashing thick black fog from their bodies. The thick black fog was like a completely different form of abyssal energy. It was so dense that the soul bombs that had landed in it could not explode. On the other hand, soul beams that landed in it had also vanished akin to clay oxen going into the sea. Zhong Huanyun had a cold expression. He was well aware that this was the Black Empress clan's infamous trick known as Black Devour Demon. The fog was capable of devouring every object or energy and then converted a certain amount of it into its own strength to use a hyper-powerful ability. It was capable of functioning as both attack and defense skill. This was the Black Empress clan's endowed ability, and one could even say that all their abilities were derived with this Black Devour Demon fog as a foundation. The Black Devour Demon fog arose into the sky and blocked the majority of attacks in a split second. These 6 Black Empresses were all bestowed with ability close to ordinary title Duluos that were of course not clad in battle armors. They were exceedingly skilled in shielding a large number of abyssal creatures behind them. One after another abyssal creatures were concealed behind the fog. Those creatures were extremely swift in movement, so they could instantly burst forth with a speed faster than the speed of sound for a certain distance. Zhong Huanyun inhaled a deep breath. The only way to deal with Black Devour Demon fog was to resist by force using their energy. If the energy exerted from their side exceeded the Black Devour Demon fog's limit, then they could break the fog with one strike. This would undoubtedly result in high consumption of their energy, but this was an issue that they could not care much about now. Meanwhile, Zhong Huanyun felt his chest tighten as something emerged in his mind all of a sudden. Soon after that, the bright mirror behind his back flashed with radiance as a silhouette appeared by his side. Enormous golden dragon wings spread open and emitted strong blood essence fluctuation. That very moment when the powerful blood essence appeared, despite his cultivation base, even Zhong Huanyun could feel his blood essence being affected. Terrifying energy fluctuation gushed out at this moment while the strong blood essence had made a dash of gold-red color appear on the sky. There was no doubt that the silhouette illuminated by his bright mirror domain was Tang Wulin. On the other hand, Tang Wulin's eyes had already completely turned gold-red while his aura was fluctuating in a rather unstable manner. Streams of golden electric radiance emerged continuously in his surroundings, and even his Dragon Moon battle armor was undergoing some transformations. A layer of gold-red mist emerged on the original golden scale-like surface of his battle armor that made Tang Wulin's entire person appear slightly illusionary. On the other hand, the mist seemed to be contracting and expanding on a loop following the sound of his heartbeat. At the same time, when the entire process was repeating itself, Tang Wulin's blood essence fluctuation surged without a stop. Roar! Tang Wulin suddenly looked up to the sky and roared aloud as if he could not endure any more. In a split second, the golden dragon spear appeared in his right hand. He transformed into a gold-red stream as he pounced straight for the abyssal passage. Tang Wulin. The startled Zhong Huanyun immediately shouted aloud from behind. The boy was Blood God Army's main pillar to deal with the Abyssal plane in the future. Zhong Huanyun could never allow any mishap to happen to him. Fortunately, Tang Wulin did not dive in, but he suddenly pierced out with the golden dragon spear in his hand as his body stopped in the air. A valiant dragon's roar instantly burst out and a giant golden dragon abruptly shot out from the tip of golden dragon spear. The dragon bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it suddenly swept across the sky and shot right into the black devoured demon fog which had already risen into the sky. The black devoured demon fog had already spread in the distance less than 1,000 meters away from the exit. The fusiform demon in the back crossed the demon fog and leaped into the sky before transforming into sharp streaks in an attempt to break through the exit. However, the giant golden dragon sent out by Tang Wulin had already appeared at this exact moment. The golden dragon roared aloud with unprecedented power while the golden giant dragon's tail was still connected to Tang Wulin's golden dragon spear. The golden dragon was over 500 meters in length while its majestic influence and enormous dragon wings suddenly seemed to be filling the entire passage to its brink. Tang Wulin devoured all the life force by sapping 6-clawed demon emperor and emperor dry in succession. Even though the majority of life force was devoured by the life seed, it was mainly consuming the plain seeds carried by the two great kinds. The planar law and original life force contained in the plain seed was what it needed the most. As the host of life seed, Tang Wulin had already received an exceedingly massive amount of benefits from the seed in addition to the devouring of two great kings' life force. He felt like his body was about to explode from overconsumption. His dragon core and soul core were already absorbing at full force, but it was still impossible for one to swallow a fat man in one gulp. Just as the two great cores had all temporarily reached their full saturation, Tang Wulin was like an inflated ball. His entire person appeared normal, but in reality, he felt so full that he could explode at any moment. Fortunately, Golden Dragon King Seal was suppressed by the massive amount of life force in Tang Wulin's body. Otherwise, he was certain that if both internal and external issues were to occur simultaneously, he would not be able to withstand anymore. Thus, he needed to pour out the excess energy that could not be absorbed by his body at present. Only by doing so could recover from the ticking time bomb like the state of his body right now. This resulted in the appearance of the 500-meter-long golden dragon earlier. Even if his cultivation base was elevated to title d'honneur rank in the future, he could not necessarily have performed such a strike with his golden dragon spear. Yet, he could do it right now. Tang Wulin's soul power cultivation base had already achieved over rank 60. In addition to his powerful Golden Dragon King's bloodline power and the amplification of his two-word battle armor, his overall cultivation base could already rival a title d'honneur that was not clad in battle armor. On the other hand, the spear which he pierced out at this very moment had already far exceeded a title d'honneur's domain and had even exceeded a hyper d'honneur's standards. In simpler words, this was equal to an attack produced by converting the life force Tang Wulin devoured from an emperor and 6-clawed demon emperor. One could only imagine how powerful it was. The fusiform demon had yet to come into contact with the golden giant dragon when a gold-red mist was ignited from the tip of the spear. The demon was instantly vaporized in the air before turning into abyssal energy as it dissipated into the air. However, a ghastly scene appeared. Just as the abyssal energy had begun to dissipate, the gigantic golden dragon had arrived and it was immediately absorbed by the dragon before turning into a portion of Tang Wulin's energy. The golden dragon at present was just like a part of Tang Wulin's golden dragon spear. It was an effective extension of golden dragon spear. Almost none of the fusiform demons could charge past the invisible and terrifying blood essence fluctuation where the golden dragon had passed by. The dreadful aura was so ruthless and tyrannical that even the 5 great abyssal kings were affected despite being in the depths of the abyss. Boom! The gigantic golden dragon's head abruptly charged into the black devoured demon fog condensed by the 6 black empresses. It took only a split second for the golden and black radiances to coincide in the air. The successive terrifying explosions shook the entire abyssal passage. However, the golden and black radiances were only entangled for a short while before the black fog suddenly exploded and dissipated. The 6 black empresses obviously appeared astounded and were subsequently devoured in seconds by the ferocious-looking golden dragon. They had no time to scream out in agony before they were burned and vaporized to become a part of the golden dragon in the terrifying blood essence fluctuation. The golden dragon extended from 500 meters to 1,000 meters in length instantly, with a stream of golden light connecting its back to the golden dragon spear. The gigantic golden dragon that charged downward shook its head and wagged its tail as it headed straight toward the depths of the abyss. Meanwhile, the Black Monarch moved. She, who was positioned right in the middle of the five kings, moved her body ever so slightly and appeared before the golden dragon. The intense golden red color emitting from the golden dragon's body illuminated the Black Monarch's body. She had an icy cold expression on her face while the disc-shaped black hair behind her head suddenly grew longer. Her pitch-black hair made it appear as if a huge black hole had opened up behind her back. In fact, she was at the core of the entire black hole. With a slight twist of her body, she devoured all the light inside the abyssal passage and also a small portion of the radiance emitting from the giant golden dragon's body. All of a sudden, the 1,000-meter-long golden dragon shrank by at least a third before it crashed into the black hole. The black hole was deep and dark, such that the golden dragon disappeared into nothingness as soon as it fell into the hole. However, the inside of the abyssal passage shook in the next moment. A puff of golden red mist surged and spouted from the black hole. At the same time, the entire passage shook violently. Large numbers of abyssal creatures were destroyed and turned into abyssal energy in the tremor that followed. A portion of the abyssal energy was absorbed into the abyssal plane while the other portion was absorbed by Tang Wulin. The golden red color in Tang Wulin's eyes surged once again. He pointed the golden dragon spear in his hand forward. The golden red airwaves which surrounded his body rolled and tossed as an unbearable and powerful aura radiated from his entire body. The black hole shrank, causing the Black Monarch to appear once again. She raised her head and looked up at Tang Wulin above. The icy cold but pleasant voice echoed in the whole cavern, "It's you." Everyone from the Blood God army clearly heard the words. Blood One's pupils apparently constricted as he sat rigid on the main seat. It did not surprise him to hear the Black Monarch speaking in a human voice. He felt a little anxious that the Black Monarch was capable of recognizing Tang Wulin as the one who had devoured the two abyssal kings. There were 108 levels of the abyss that formed the abyssal plane. 2 levels of the plane had already disintegrated. It seemed like a small number, but in reality, it was capable of shaking the origin source of the entire abyssal plane. If this continued, the passage might even be cut off in the event the abyss could not be destroyed. Mankind would, once and for all, be rid of this intractable problem which was akin to a malignant tumor. Apparently, the Black Monarch realized this. Undoubtedly, the abyssal kings would devote all their efforts to kill Tang Wulin at all costs to prevent the annihilation of the abyssal plane. At this very moment, Blood One regretted having exposed Tang Wulin too early. He did not have much of a choice because the outburst of the abyssal plane was unexpected. Otherwise, he would launch an attack only after Tang Wulin became more powerful. If Tang Wulin had Blood One's ability in addition to the Golden Dragon Spear's devouring ability, perhaps they could resolve the grave problem of the abyssal plane for good. Huanyun! The heartless Doluo Cao Dashi shouted aloud. Zhong Huanyun immediately understood. In no time, he appeared silently behind Tang Wulin so as to protect Tang Wulin. Since the enemy had already discovered Tang Wulin's presence, they had to safeguard Tang Wulin by all means so that nothing would befall him. The Black Monarch moved. Her body only swayed once and she appeared out of thin air within 100 meters of Tang Wulin. The closer she approached, the clearer Tang Wulin could see her magnificent beauty, which was only rivaled by Gu Yuanas of all the women Tang Wulin had encountered before. Her ability to emulate the human form was genuinely remarkable. The Black Monarch's icy cold eyes seemed to have transformed into an abyss of bloodlust. She gazed fixedly at Tang Wulin while her hands stretched forward simultaneously to grab Tang Wulin's body. 2 balls of black fog condensed into giant claws that tore through the space instantly. At the same time, the black hair wool behind her head suddenly began spinning. An enormous black hole appeared silently behind Tang Wulin's back to isolate him from the bright mirror Doluo Zhong Huanyun. It was Zhong Huanyun's first encounter with the Black Monarch. He called out, "Oh, no," in his heart as the bright mirror behind his back glowed glaringly and blasted the black vortex without reservation. However, the Black Monarch's claws had already enshrouded Tang Wulin's body. Tang Wulin scoffed coldly. The golden dragon spear in his hand burst forth with thousands of the spear's radiance. Each stream of radiance was akin to a blazing streak of lightning. The spear's radiances shot out wildly and collided strongly into the black radiance. Both energies clashed with one another. The Black Devour Demon Fog produced its powerful corrosive and devouring abilities in an attempt to destroy the spear's radiance unleashed by Tang Wulin's golden dragon spear. Tang Wulin's blood essence fluctuation was elevated to its highest point. He wished that he could channel more of the blood essence power to ease the discomfort in his body. Naturally, he directed all the blood essence power in his body into the spear without the slightest reservation. All at once, the streams of golden-red radiance suddenly shrank and imploded with an indomitable momentum. They fused together and transformed into a solid, golden-red spear which pierced through the two sharp claws into the Black Monarch's face. The Black Monarch did not attempt to dodge, but she gave out a cold humph. At lightning speed, she grabbed the tip of the spear with her right hand such that the spear's majestic influence stopped abruptly. Both of them were deeply worried. Tang Wulin felt the being before him was not even a creature in human form but an enormous black hole. An immense devouring power radiated furiously from his thousand accusing fingers spear technique, almost sucking him dry in an instant. However, one rune after another emerged on the surface of his golden dragon spear at this moment. The peculiar-looking runes did not exist on the Dolor continent. Each rune was unique and appeared in the form of dragons. They were elongated and overlapped one another in layers on the golden dragon spear which then transformed into the thousand accusing fingers. Tang Wulin's feeling of being devoured stopped abruptly. On the other hand, the Black Monarch's countenance changed as if she was burned. Suddenly, she loosened the grip of her right hand. Tang Wulin felt different now as a gush of immense energy slammed into his body all of a sudden. He gave out a muffled humph as blood seeped out from his 7 orifices. It was during that moment when the golden dragon spear devoured a wisp of the Black Monarch's energy through the spot that was grabbed by the Black Monarch. The energy flowed into Tang Wulin's body. The Black Monarch stared at Tang Wulin with a burning gaze. She was filled with a murderous intent that could cause an upheaval in the heavens at present. Her right hand balled into a fist and abruptly swung a punch. The entire abyssal passage came to a halt. The size of her fist was almost the diameter of the abyssal passage. Although Tang Wulin managed to absorb the Black Monarch's energy earlier, he felt his body was about to burst from being satiated. There was no way he could convert such massive amounts of energy to retaliate at present. Tang Wulin was still far below the Black Monarch's standards judging by their intrinsic qualities. There was no way he could dodge at present. Moreover, the Black Monarch's punch was definitely a limit Dolor ranked attack. How would he stand a chance to withstand it? The black background behind Tang Wulin gradually faded to reveal the bright mirror hanging high in the air. At the same time, a sonorous and clear shout echoed in his surroundings. All the ways of heaven and earth, the soul of Dolor, the cycle of the blood gods, seal. The voice belonged to Blood One. With his roaring call, 9 colored radiances ran the length and breadth of the passage's exit at once. A gigantic rune descended from the sky to pin down the passage. Immediately, the 9 colored radiances emerged from the areas surrounding the passage and the surfaces of the walls. The circulating radiances caused the black radiance emitting from the Black Monarch's punch to shrink. It was not the power of the heartless Dolor, but the planar power of the entire plane of Dolor continent. From the Dolor continent's perspective, the abyssal creatures were invaders from another worldly plane, so it would inherently be rejected by the Dolor continent's plane. Otherwise, the Dolor continent would not be able to withstand the 108 levels of the abyss since 6,000 years ago. The passage seal had utilized the Dolor continent's planar power since the beginning of time to lock down the place. At present, Blood One was channeling the planar power through the Blood God's Great Array to resist the Black Monarch. At the same time, it was also used to suppress the abyssal passage so that the powerful abyssal creatures that came charging over could be weakened. If not for the presence of the Blood God's Great Array, how could mankind possibly suppress the abyssal plane for 6,000 years? A stream of bright radiance swept across the area above Tang Wulin's head. The radiance transformed thrice in the sky before coinciding with the heaven and earth spirits on the Doluor continent's plane to spin 9 times before finally blasting the Black Monarch's punch. A powerful energy storm erupted in the passage instantly. Tang Wulin's body disappeared abruptly in the intense white light. This was the marvelous part of using a domain soul skill. The bright mirror Doluor Zhong Huanyun absorbed Tang Wulin's body directly through his bright mirror domain and combined his strength with the blood god's great array to resist the Black Monarch by force. It was precisely then that the Black Monarch revealed her Abyssal Plane's king rank ability. She remained suspended in midair within the terrifying energy storm. Despite being lashed by such an intense impact, she floated about like a statue and was barely shaken while her eyes were beaming with radiance akin to a pair of black jewels. Her hands moved rhythmically and gently in front of her body as she conjured wisps of black silk in between her fingers which spun toward the bright mirror Doluor. Zhong Huanyun did not choose to retaliate by force. He had already advanced to the rank of a limit Doluor and even possessed a set of forward battle armor. At the very least, he should be able to resist the Black Monarch even if he failed to defeat her. There were only Zhong Huanyun and Blood One from the Blood God army who was the 2 main pillars of strength. One not only had to rely on one's strength when fighting against such top-grade Abyssal Kings, more importantly, one must engage the entire Doluor continent's planar power to resist it. Otherwise, they would not stand a chance of defeating the Abyssal King by relying on their strengths alone. It was why Blood One chose to combine his efforts with the rest of the 8 Blood Gods to launch the Blood God's Great Array and not engage the enemy by himself. As long as the Blood God's Great Array was stable, the Doluor continent plane's dominance could be felt. Despite the Black Monarch's power and her demigod status, she could not fully unleash her most powerful potential when the Abyssal Plane was suppressed by the Doluor continent's plane. When one party was weakened and the other strengthened, it would be easier for mankind to withstand the Black Monarch. Tang Wulin was capable of threatening the life's origin of the Abyssal Kings, so he was considered mankind's trump card. Even with such formidable power, the Black Monarch dared not challenge the Blood God's Great Array by herself. Could it be that she was apprehensive that Tang Wulin could devour her origin power after witnessing his ability? Hence, Zhong Huanyun brought along Tang Wulin as they retreated. The most important thing now was to stabilize the situation at present. A white radiance flashed and Zhong Huanyun was already out of the Blood God's Great Array. He did not continue fighting with the Black Monarch. At the same time, Tang Wulin appeared shimmering with a golden-red radiance next to Zhong Huanyun. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Nevertheless, it was witnessed by every soldier in the Blood God army. They saw Tang Wulin using his overpowering influence to annihilate the 6 Black Empresses in a split second and fighting valiantly against the Black Monarch. His golden-red silhouette dominated over the entire scene, which was deeply ingrained in everyone's mind. Tang Wulin was already the hero of the army's soldiers after they watched his performance in the Federal Star Do Battle Network Challenge. However, they did not feel the extent of Tang Wulin's power at the time. After all, he was fighting against 3-word battle armor masters under the constraints of the competition. It was only now that they bore witness to Tang Wulin's terrifying fighting capacity. The gigantic golden dragon over 500 meters in length left behind an impression which was so profound that it shocked them to the core. At present, Tang Wulin with the golden-red radiance that surrounded his body continued to expand while the aura in his body was partially visible. The 6 Empresses' energies were so out of this world that Tang Wulin could not absorb a major portion of it. The rest of the energies were expelled through the attacks. In any case, the Black Empress' origin power was still infusing into his body. Tang Wulin's Dragon Core and Soul Core were circulating in overload. Thus, the aura emitted from his body was extremely unstable. If an ordinary Soul Master had absorbed such a massive amount of energy, the Soul Master's body would have exploded. However, Tang Wulin was different. He had a body that could withstand such enormous amounts of energy. More importantly, the life seed felt contented with Tang Wulin as its host body right now after absorbing the 2 Abyssal King's plane seeds. The thick life force in Tang Wulin's body protected him. Tang Wulin utterly had no need to worry about suffering any injuries to his body after receiving the life force's protection from the life seed. Every living creature had its own life's origin. The stronger one's life origin, the more powerful one's life energy was. The energy converted from the life seed strengthened the life's origin of Tang Wulin such that his body remained stable and did not explode despite the continuous elevation of his energy. Hence, Tang Wulin felt as if he could not exhaust his energy. All at once, the energy in his entire body oscillated between expansion and contraction while the golden dragon spear in his hand pulsated with its radiance. He wished that he could charge into the abyss to continue fighting. He could still sense the Black Monarch's incredible power despite the expanding energy in his body. The Black Monarch's energy remained a threat to his life. However, the energy surging in his body enhanced his will to fight. I won't turn back no matter how powerful the enemy is. This sole idea was in Tang Wulin's mind at present. His spiritual rank was undergoing minute transformations following the elevation of his life's origin. He sensed the alternation of the 9 heaven and earth spirits channeling from the blood god's great array. Finally, he felt as if he had transformed into the dominator of heaven and earth. Huanyun, fall back. Blood One's voice was heard. Zhong Huanyun was stunned for a moment as he looked toward Blood One. At present, the abyssal creatures had stopped attacking momentarily after sensing the collision between the two great powerhouses earlier. However, the abyssal creatures were still surging out from the fissure continuously. Huanyun did not understand the energy used by the abyssal plane which allowed it to withstand such overbearingness from the blood god's great array. Blood One spoke with a deep voice, the great array will protect Tang Wulin. Only he can defeat these abyssal creatures now. Wulin, listen carefully. From now on, we'll help you to be the core person of our blood god's great array. There's no need for you to worry about defense. You'll only be responsible for the attack. Try your best to kill the enemy. Do you understand? Don't fret over the energy that you can't absorb but pass it on to your seed. The heartless Doluo realized the distinctive quality of Tang Wulin's body. He then came up with a judgment about the seed and gave his orders. At present, the energy in Tang Wulin's body expanded rapidly, making him look like a huge balloon. He dared not even open his mouth for fear that his body would be blown away by the leaking energy when he opened his mouth. So, he nodded his head at Blood One. It was not that he was unwilling to channel the energy to the life seed. The life seed had to be willing to absorb the energy as well. The life seed was quite selective, for it fancied the energy from the abyssal plane's plane seed the most. The cycle of the blood gods, the guardian of the 9 spirits. Spin. This video will end here. Like video and subscribe to my channel.